Is it wrong that I kinda miss Dead Island Epidemic? Sure, I don't give a damn about the Dead Island series. The characters were painfully unbalanced and overpriced, and the Crossroads game mode took everything I loved about what I'd played in the closed beta and shat all over it. But there was always something fun about the different control scheme and the concept changes to the traditional MOBA formula. But Stunlock Studios, the developer tasked with making that game, wasn't exactly known for that game alone, instead creating a well-received cult classic game known as Bloodline Champions, which was first published by the Murderers of Joy and All Things Great, Funcom. So despite trying to bring Bloodline back to its feet, Stunlock went ahead and made a spiritual successor. With that game finally hitting launch this month, we can see if it's being as well received, and if it's worth a look in general. This is the MMO Grinder, and it's time to look at Battlerite. I don't even remember what piqued my initial interest in Battlerite. Free weekend for some side quest fodder seems about right, but what I found was a game I generally had interest in playing, despite a bit of a learning curve. It's a game that left enough of an impression on me that I decided to pick up the Founders Pack and proceed to almost never play it, but hell, at least I have all the characters available to me now. Battlerite and its predecessor Bloodline Champions puts the arena back in multiplayer online battle arena, but trimming out most of that MOBA fluff while focusing on the concept of team fights. You don't worry about who bought the right items or who farmed the most XP and gold. Just jump in, use your skills, kill the other guy, and try not to die yourself. Now that we've seen the free-to-play launch and the game is getting some semblance of attention, we might as well get back to this, and give our take on what might end up being a pretty entertaining game for the competitive scene. The first thing you'll likely realize when even looking at Battlerite is that it looks like a MOBA. Not in the terms of gameplay or that particular map style, but the typical graphic style that emphasizes a cel-shade light art with exaggerated character models to emphasize different aspects of that champion. Essentially, if you took Battlerite and put it beside League of Legends and Dota's characters or environments, you'd notice very similar aspects in terms of aesthetic. This can actually be a double-edged sword, as people may be expecting Battlerite to play like a traditional MOBA, but we'll discuss how that works soon. In terms of graphical fidelity, we can't say that there's anything that stands out as being bad. All the texture work looks good, if a bit lower on resolution. Models don't have any noticeable low-quality aspects, and there's even some real neat touches, like having an actual crowd cheering from the sidelines of the arena. The characters themselves are very distinct thus far, and while you may not remember their names, you won't confuse one character for another, as they have their own custom animations and oftentimes sizes that'll help differentiate them dramatically. Where we can't say the same is in terms of attacks, as they can often blend into one another when in larger 3v3 fights, so just be prepared for things that get a bit hectic. If there's anything I'm having trouble with visually, it's that the chaos of battle makes it oddly easy to lose track of my cursor. Oftentimes during fights I'll end up missing simple shots or swinging in the wrong direction because my cursor wasn't pointing in the direction I thought it was and I can't seem to locate it. I end up wiggling my mouse around in a mad panic until I see it again. I wish there was a way to change up this cursor to be more noticeable for me. Something as simple as a color or shape change, even a slight animation or flashing maybe. But we're stuck with this small golden crosshair at the moment, so hopefully you won't have that issue yourself. Battlerite's music can best be said to be well crafted, but it's often so low-key that you'll forget you even heard it. Honestly, most of the match will be spent listening for enemy attacks, or being so intently focused on dodging various abilities while setting up your own, that you could be forgiven for thinking the game didn't have that much music to begin with. Some of this is down to the overly bombastic nature of the game itself, but it works rather well here with these flashy attacks, especially once you land the killing blow on an enemy champion, which resounds with a deep bass thud for emphasis. In fact, each attack technically has its own sound effects and proper positional audio, so you can learn where anyone is and who they are by simply the attacks you're hearing, but that'll obviously take a bit of practice. The characters themselves have voice snippets to go along with them, which help to highlight their individual personality, and some of these can be pretty funny. Be the character dumber than a box of rocks or an insane shotgun-wielding grandma who rides rockets, the small audio snippets help add a bit more to each character. Starting out, you'll be forced into tutorials so you can actually unlock additional heroes, assuming that you are going with the free-to-play option, but we'll discuss that more later. Here you'll play as Jade and run through a mini-campaign that'll teach you the basics of your character and how the game actually works. See, as much as it looks like a MOBA, the game really plays nothing like a traditional MOBA and is far more about arena fights and quick reactions. There are no creep waves to manage or towers to dive for kills. Instead, it's all about fighting the other champions. There's a minor exception to this in Battlegrounds mode, but we'll talk about that soon enough. Controls within the game are WASD-based movement, with your mouse being used to aim your attacks, including your melee attacks, as you can miss somebody if you aren't exactly on target with your swings. From here, your skills are bound to the various keys around WASD, though they're all completely rebindable, and I just put them into the number keys to work with my mouse. By default, certain skills will usually be universal to most champions. Counters tend to be on Q, dodge and speed boosts tend to be on space, crowd controls may be on E, Tier 1 ultimates are on R, and Tier 2 ultimates on F, with left and right mouse click being two different attacks. Yes, there are multiple tiers of ultimate abilities, but that isn't the only oddity. Most notably, each attack is a skill shot type of attack, for those familiar with MOBA terms, but in addition to that, those skill shots have a very noticeable delay to them before they fire off. When you cast most skills, your targeter will appear with a look depending on that skill. Be it a forward shot or an AoE target circle, after half a second of delay, the skill will cast in the direction the targeter is placed, which might throw you off until you get used to how it works. Not every skill has that delay, especially counters or anything that targets around your character, but the delay is still universal to most champions and will have to be learned very quickly. As you fight, you'll gain energy for your ultimate, which will fill your meter, but you might notice that that meter is split into 4 separate segments. This is because various characters have ults that use up different portions of that segment, or all of it at once. Yet the ultimates aren't the only things that will drain the meter. If you hold in the Shift key, you'll notice that 2 of your icons for your basic abilities will change, as these are known as the EX skills, and make the usual ability that they're placed on act as a different one. As an example, you may have a 90-degree block shield on your character, but when shifting it to EX, it might change into a bubble shield that you could throw on yourself or someone else and just forget about. When it comes to the actual ultimate abilities, every character has those too, costing 1 segment of the bar to cast a Tier 1 ability, while the major ultimate will cost all 4 segments to fire off. Once you've finished fighting through the tutorial and learned the above quirks, you'll be let into the game proper, and have the ability to select from free rotation heroes as you wish. These heroes are broken down into 3 categories: melee, ranged, and support. Each of them doing exactly what you'd expect based on their category, with support usually having more of the odder quirks to their particular playstyle depending on the hero. This is also when your daily and weekly quests will first kick in, which will task you with completing very specific assignments to get rewards. This is pretty standard, but what is a welcome change is that you can complete almost all of these within the practice mode, aka players versus AI for those who don't want to go into the more competitive aspects of the game. The AI isn't exactly good at the game, but it sits in that weird middle ground where it's too easy to really properly train on, but too good with certain mechanics to feel entirely fair to fight against. Watch for those frame-perfect counters and pinpoint petrify shots from champions that normally would have a hard time landing those shots, or laugh when the AI program can't decide between fleeing your champions at low health or walking into the damage wall during sudden death. Should you choose to play practice matches or even ranked, you'll be in the standard arena mode, where 2 to 3 champions on either side will fight for supremacy in 1 life best of 5, where 3 victories will earn you the win. When you first load in, you'll be introduced to the loadout system, which are passives that are always active on your character. We would suggest taking the recommended loadout that's available until you understand how that particular champion plays before you make your own. Then a short timer, along with a ride to the arena, will commence before you're let out to fight for the round, with the winners being the last one standing before it resets for further rounds. If a round begins to drag on, the sudden death mode is activated and a damaging aura will begin to slowly enclose, until only the central ring is left in the clear, and if time drags on a bit further, the ring will eventually fully consume the arena, ensuring matches cannot last too long. Within the arena you'll find different colored orbs, green being for healing and yellow giving you a boost to your ultimate meter. This even comes into play should you lose a teammate in the arena, as they'll drop a massive yellow orb that only an allied player can pick up, which will give you a boost to your ultimate energy depending on how much energy that they were carrying when taken down, which may instantly allow you to swing the momentum away from a curb stomp. The second mode that Battlerite has on offer, which is currently tagged as a beta, is known as Battlegrounds, and that's where things get a bit different. Whereas in Arena you die, you're done for the round, in Battlegrounds you can die as many times as you want and continue to respawn fairly quickly. The primary goal here is to power up your Guardian by completing various randomized objectives, like killing camps of enemies, defeating AI-controlled champions, escorting balloons, or guarding and capturing points. Enemy players killed do not count towards that Guardian's power total. Once you're full on energy, the Guardian will cast an attack on the enemy Guardian to make them vulnerable for a time. If you think that sounds like how Gigantic worked, well, kinda is, but the weakened Guardian can be damaged for as much or as little as possible, even having several health bars shaved off in a single attack, and they won't heal back any health at all. This is where a well-coordinated team, even if they consistently lose the objectives or get destroyed by enemy players in team fights, could still win by understanding how best to maximize the damage on the opposing Guardian. Seriously, I think we won every battleground we played on stream. I managed to snag a few victories for the pugs I joined, even when I was convinced we could never win, or was even down a player. People really don't seem to get the importance of that Guardian Assault. Scattered across the arena you'll find the same buffs, such as health and ultimate, as you did in arena mode, but with the addition of red sword orbs, which will make you do more damage the more you've collected. Yet, this also will make you a pretty big target for the enemy team to take out, so they in turn can gather up the swords that you drop when killed. You can also recall for easy heals by hitting X and heading back behind your Guardian, something I notice a lot of players don't seem to realize. That basically does it for gameplay, as there's no crafting system, there's no guild system, and no Battlerites that you have to unlock and earn through progression, or anything else to that. The game knows what it wants to be and puts all of its effort into being an arena brawler with fantastical heroes, and nothing else in the way of gameplay fluff. In many ways, the community is what you could expect from a very competitive-focused game. This isn't so much in terms of chatting, as actually talking to people in-game is oddly difficult, but more in terms of being called out for not playing the meta. I've also had the usual situation of certain players getting snippy or talking shit to teammates after losing a match, despite not doing all that well themselves. This is the kind of game where a really skilled player could likely take out the other 2 or 3 opponents on their own, so make sure you're at least capable before you call out your teammates for being the entire reason you lost, after all. Of course, a game about heroes bashing each other's faces in an arena has a meta to it. This is mostly to do with team composition, though, but it can extend to the loadout you pick. Though if you do fight a meta-focused team, you can expect a lot of disables and stealth characters. There's been a rather large pushback by the community against this new Battlegrounds mode. The good news, at least for myself, is that the metagamers seem to hate playing it. Its initial forced replacement to the casual queue made it very poorly received by arena fans, with some immediately dismissing it as just a basic MOBA mode. But beyond some barely related mechanics like a core-style Guardian and brush to hide in, the standards of towers, creeps, and jungling is just not a thing here. I honestly enjoy the mode quite a bit, but hopefully they don't get pressured to just ditch it. And while I admit initially getting rid of the casual arena mode to replace it with this one wasn't the smartest idea to introduce it and warm new players to it, the players really should at least give Battlegrounds a shot if they're looking for a change in playstyle and tactics. Players might even find champions that they despised in arena mode can take on a whole new use and feel in this one. Being that the game is teams of 3 as their maximum, it really shouldn't be too hard to get together with a friend or two and just enjoy the practice matches on your own. If you can get only one other person to play with, you can still do practice matches and the game will set it into a 2v2 mode instead. So there are decent options out there if you want to avoid some of the more hostile elements of competitive games, but we should say that those elements are not as pronounced as you would expect in the first place. It should be noted that the game has had server issues as of late, and while the developers have continued to smooth them out, it is worth being aware that in the event they do start acting up, you might have to repeat several missions in the tutorial, or doing your dailies over and over again to get them to count, or possibly not receiving any rewards post-match because the servers are under a particularly heavy load. An interesting aspect of the game is that you can actually have it record your matches and are given the ability to post them fully or just put up highlights of them. This can be a useful tool to learning how to play a character, seeing how the community plays them, or check out playground matches and people using Theorycraft loadouts to be used in the game proper. So the community itself can very easily put up guides to teach new players how to hit the ground running. This cash shop is gonna be pretty divisive based on the simple fact that it has loot boxes as its most prominent microtransaction. Alright, I already hear the keyboard storm rumbling on the horizon, especially with EA being EA recently. Loot boxes are now being brought to the rage forefront where mere mention of the concept, despite its contents, is no longer okay. Yet when Overwatch included and debatedly normalized a predatory trend, many celebrated just because it was only cosmetics. No mention that you couldn't outright buy what you wanted, forcing all of those unlocks to the will of the RNG. Just saying, if you want to rage at Battlerite for the system, work some of that rage towards Blizzard while you're at it. It's the exact same thing here. Battlerite takes the standard Overwatch style system to a T, save as Grindstone member Kurochi had put it, I get less loot boxes, less frequently, but they don't have mostly garbage in it, so it balances out. You'll always find at least marginally good cosmetics within even the standard boxes. And getting a duplicate grants you a decent amount of compensation tokens to use for buying what you want outright, even if some of those token totals are a bit, steep. The earned and in-game currency purchased silver loot boxes guarantee 1 blue or greater, so the white-white-blue-white curse continues minus 1 white, but thankfully, paid gold loot boxes guarantee 1 purple or greater. You can even earn loot boxes of all varieties fairly easy as well, from daily or weekly quests to even just leveling up your account and hero levels, which will give you plenty of chance to get all the loot you would want from them, along with buying silvers with in-game currency, meaning that you can truly play this game for free and get things within a reasonable amount of time. You can pay to unlock any hero of your choice through the standard of grinding coins or purchasing gems with cash in order to unlock them individually, with prices of each champion varying by how long that they've been in the game. Or you can just buy a one-time hero pack that'll get you all those heroes now and for the future. It's always the system that effectively turns a free-to-play game into a voluntary buy-to-play game, and freeing up any gems and battle coins to start working on gathering loot box cosmetics instead. While there's very little to go over in Battlerite, as it's not something with a ton of features to cover, it's very much something I enjoyed in bursts, and a game that I can more compare to a fighting game than a MOBA. It's more about learning your champion, how they compare and contrast with their teammates and enemies, with little or no emphasis on learning those maps, optimal jungle and lane paths, and experience farming that has become a staple for the supposed arena genre. And while there might be a lot less here for the metagaming types to calculate and theorize about, and more for those with twitch reactions and reflexes to exploit, this is another case of minute to learn, lifetime to master that should have no trouble finding an audience that'll appreciate it, as long as they're still not too hung up on what happened to Bloodline Champions. Here's my final rating. It's always nice and, well, imperative to see a variety of characters in a game like this, and it's even better when many of them look and play so differently from each other. Sure, once you've figured out the concept of playing melee, ranged, or support, you'll have a general idea on how to handle those kind of champions, but you'll still need to learn and understand the best way to use each specific one's unique skills. Both Bako and Rook may be hulking melee, axe-wielding tanks, but each of them have a skill set that require you to learn the best ways of getting in your opponent's face and dealing with them appropriately. Luckily, it's really easy to just jump into a game and pick your favorite, provided you have them unlocked, even though everyone can be tooled around within playground mode before you would ever see your first battle. There's very little to have to understand, and making it a very easy game to just hop in and out of. Matches are especially quick with simple arena matches and a round system, and even the Battlegrounds mode will rarely devolve into a common 30 minutes or more time commitment that more involved games of this type can end up being, making it a good game to toss some occasional time into if you don't have that much time to give in the first place. If there is an all characters unlocked option in a MOBA, I cannot recommend it enough, and this game is no exception. Sales for the pack tend to be fairly common, and when individual characters can cost nearly a third of the pack's full price, it's almost pointless not to get the pack if you plan to use any kind of money to unlock champions, and not just your playtime. Of course, making your tiny sprite look neat always seems to be a draw to these competitive games, and while I'm not really keen on using the Overwatch loot box system to obtain a lot of these cool mounts and skins, at least this one is tooled in a pretty fair way, allowing you more than a few ways to earn them if you're not going to buy them outright. If you're still wondering where the rest of the game is and why I dedicate an entire episode to what amounts to a top-down fighting game, despite the fact the MMO market is unquestionably doomed, then you'll probably not want to bother with this title if it's not caught your interest by now. There's really little more than arena fighting, and even the attempt to expand on it wasn't met with excited interest, and doesn't deviate from that arena fight concept too much. I'd love to see some kind of PvE aspect to expand the world, characters, and story, like what we'd seen from Dead Island Epidemic. But I'm perfectly okay with that not happening, seeing as how it would detract from the core purpose of the game. It's arena fighting, and that's it. It's that mindset that forces players of other MOBAs to look elsewhere for what they might be used to. There's nothing overly complex about Battlerite's formula, which I find to be an advantage, but it could be just as easily seen as a detriment. You can't alter an item build mid-match to counter an enemy team, or find a safe and optimal farming path to hide and upgrade until you feel more confident, or use your last hit mechanics or tower diving strategies. You get in, you kill dudes, you don't die. There's just nothing else to do here. I can't really suggest going this game alone. Find some friends, look for a few interested players. For the love of God, don't go it alone, as it's just an undulating waterbed of frustration when your arena partners spend half the match trying to hide and then blaming you for the loss, or Battleground teammates walk around with half a bar of health trying to chase enemies into their base instead of focusing on any objectives. It's easy for a chat to devolve into a shouting match, and the game is just too fast-paced to even rely on using chat to communicate with such reactive-level Twitch gameplay in tow. Hop into a Discord, grab a couple friends, and struggle together against the odds. Say no to pugs, your sanity will thank you. Next time, our options remain completely limited again, and we may only have about one title that we can look at. So I actually haven't decided yet, but we'll figure something out for the end of the year, and next year's going to be a thing, is what I'm saying.